Hey guys, my name's Lama, and it has been a while. Now, all I can really do for that is apologise and explain that while there have been a lot of factors in why I haven't uploaded in a very, very, very long time, one of the biggest ones has actually just been that I've not really been playing much WoW. I will never stop loving this game, and I have, however, had periods where it's been a bit draining to play because of the fact that the game's not been in a good position. But recently, having talked to friends about their excitement for the War Within and how little excitement I have for ever thinking about going back to retail, it made me realise that I was interested in getting back into playing some WoW. And I thought that I'd go back into playing hardcore because that is the game mode that I was enjoying the most when last I played. Now, I was expecting this to potentially have some relatively poor results because ultimately hardcore had its moment in the sun. However, when I have gone back to play it, I couldn't have been more wrong. So I decided that I was going to make this quick video for you all to share my reasons for why I think now might be the best time to get into hardcore, whether you are a returning player or whether you are someone who has never tried hardcore before. So let's dive in. Now, reason number one is because hardcore is not dead. I know a lot of people, myself included, were of the opinion, at least until about a week ago when I started replaying, that the hardcore scene had died off. The content creators had pretty much left it behind, and that is generally a pretty bad sign for any given game mode in any game these days, as much as I wish that wasn't the case. However, when I logged back in, I logged onto the existing realm of characters that I already have, which is Necrosh EU, which is actually by far the less populated of the two EU hardcore servers. And I have not had any issues with regards to finding groups, or be that for dungeons or group quests or basically anything that I've wanted some company for. There are plenty of people playing, it is very active. On this realm, there is still usually a daily world buff going out for people who like to play that way. And all in all, it is generally, in my opinion, a better time to be on in regards to population than it was back when hardcore was at its peak, where people were fighting for mobs or people were just generally getting in each other's way, competing for difficult resources out in the world. Now you do have a lot more freedom to be able to get your quests done. There are still people there. However, you aren't going to find yourself in a cluttered, overpopulated world, which personally I think is the best way to go. Beyond that, of course, even if this weren't the case and the population were to die off dramatically, hardcore is a game mode that just does not really depend on other people the same way that other game modes do, meaning that whenever you want to play WoW, this is always going to be a version of the game that does not have a particularly big barrier to entry, only a barrier to success. Talking about barriers, however, leads us nicely onto my second point for why I think people should be playing hardcore, and that is that the capacity for self-imposed barriers put in by Blizzard in the form of the Selffound mode is honestly excellent. Now, I played the majority of my hardcore time before the official servers released, playing on the solo Selffound mode that was popular with people playing with the add-on, and I really enjoyed it, but there was, without a doubt, a lot of restrictions that made the game, while admittedly more difficult and more challenging, somewhat less fun. Most notably being that you are very alone. You are basically playing a single player game, apart from once per character you get to run a particular dungeon every now and then. Now, Self-Found is not going to be the same level of challenge that that was back on Unofficial. However, I think it strikes a nice balance of being difficult and challenging enough while still allowing you to be able to play with friends and actually have a social experience playing the game, which obviously is a benefit to an MMO. That being said, if you don't want to, there is nothing forcing you to, and you can still have that same truly independent challenge that you would have got on solo Self-Found. It is entirely up to you. However, limiting dungeon runs to one a day, I think, is an excellent way of doing hardcore. I think that this allows you to be able to get what you want from any given dungeon without being able to farm it and essentially exploit it. And I also believe that the capacity for what is really required to make the challenge in Self-Found of not being able to send anything from other characters, not being able to use the auction house, and not being able to trade with other players is the way that you are best introducing a difficulty curve for enhancing the difficulty of the Selffound challenge compared to the normal hardcore game mode. Now, next up, I want to talk about the fact that, while I have already touched on it, hardcore is a solo game mode for all intents and purposes, and I think with where WoW is at right now, that is not a bad thing for what game mode you want to play. Now, I know a lot of you are probably going to think that that's a really silly thing to say for an MMO that is a social game, but if you hear me out, you will understand some of my logics. Now, recently, we have gone in the last few years from having basically one game mode of WoW in the form of retail to having, at this point, what, 5, 6 game modes? You've got Miss Pandaria Remix, you have retail, you have classic, you have Kata Classic, you have Era, you have hardcore, you've got all of these different game modes, and it is splitting the player base to the point where I actually wanted to play WoW, like I've just said, to come back to WoW, and I got in touch with my friends that I often played with, and a lot of them were interested too. However, I wanted to play hardcore. I have another friend who wants to play retail, and another who wants to play Kata Classic, and the two of them are basically not playing right now because no one wants to play the same game mode as each other. And yes, we should be compromising, we should be playing with our friends and putting that first and playing some slightly inferior versions of the game if that's what our friends want to play, or maybe play a combination of all of them. But that's not how people want to actually do it, especially with a game that takes as much time as WoW does. People want to dedicate themselves to the game mode they enjoy, and splitting the player base can actually be a big problem. Now, with that being said, the one of us that is actually playing is myself on hardcore, because ultimately, when nobody else wants to play it, I can still just play it myself. This is an excellent thing for a transition period for WoW, which is what we are about to see when the War Within drops. Now, a lot of people are going to go over to retail from the other game modes or come back to WoW and go into that, and it's going to get that new expansion hype. I don't know how big it'll be these days compared to the expansions in the past, but it will be there in some way, shape, or form. The problem is that when that happens, not only do players shift away, but also it doesn't last very long. So even if you got in on it and went to the War Within yourself, a lot of people are going to drop off. That's just how it works with these expansion launches. At which point then people are going to find themselves wanting to leave War Within and not know where to go, and we're going to get another reshift in regards to where people are playing. If this happens and your friends are all going all over the spot, you can still play hardcore. You aren't going to miss out in any way, shape, or form. If you want to take a little break, go over to War Within with your friends and come back, you aren't going to suffer in this game mode the same way that you would, say, Cataclysm Classic, where you have fallen behind on gear progression because you missed raids for a month. This is an excellent thing in regards to the longevity of the game mode, as well as allowing people to be able to take breaks and enjoy it in their own time. And the final part that I want to make reference to here, while I know most of these are being interlinked in regards to the capacity for being social and the different communities that are around, but now that hardcore has lost its majority of the population flash in the pan moment that it had, the players that remain are players who are actually really enjoying hardcore. These are the dedicated players who are going to help each other, they're going to be social and friendly, and they are ultimately just going to be a better group of players to be sharing the world of Azeroth with. Now, when I came back into the game, I met people who I have instantly enjoyed playing with, I have ran multiple dungeons with, I have joined a guild, and I am actually being social with people and enjoying interacting with the same people and creating a community. Now, admittedly, it's not the same size and scale of community it would have been in the past, but it is much more tight-knit and enjoyable, with the capacity to actually have more meaningful conversations than, "Hi, do you want to tank this?" This isn't necessarily something that everybody needs in regards to their game, but I do personally think that it is very nice. While I'm not the most social player in WoW, generally speaking, unless I am playing with my actual friends that I know, I am someone who appreciates having the option, as well as just the general friendly vibes that people are able to give off, which is pretty much the exclusive experience that I am having currently in regards to hardcore WoW. And finally, my last reason that I want to suggest to you that you play hardcore WoW, as much as this is a bit of a given, the game mode is exactly the same as it always was, and is just a lot of fun. It is as simple as that. The game mode hasn't changed. Just because the population shifted away and the flash in the pan moment is over, it doesn't mean that the game has actually altered itself to become any worse. The game mode is an absolutely fantastic way to play WoW, and in all honesty, is the best way to play WoW that I am aware of that there has ever been. Not to say that I haven't enjoyed plenty of other versions of WoW. I absolutely adore this game, and it is probably my second favourite video game of all time, and certainly the one that I have put the most hours into by a large margin. But that just means that I feel that I have the right to be able to have an opinion on such matters, having put in more tens of thousands, if maybe not even hundreds of thousands of hours than I care to admit into this game. Across all of those various game modes and all of the decades that I've been playing this game, I don't think I've ever had more fun than I have playing hardcore. And I expect that will be the case for any of you that try it out as well. But with all that being said, those are my reasons for why I think that you should jump back into hardcore in the summer of 2024. If you have any opinions, do let me know down below, or if maybe you're still playing, let me know down below as well, and I hope to see you in the next one. Laters.